I never expected to fall in love with a college girl at my daughter's blind date. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The room was electric with awkward tension. I could feel the sweat pooling under my arms. My daughter's voice was a fragile thread in the air, each word a careful balance of anticipation and fear. Her eyes glistened with hope. Mine darted around the room like a trapped bird. She wanted this. I wanted to protect her. But when the door swung open, everything changed. There she was. A whirlwind of laughter and confidence. Her piercing blue eyes caught mine, and I swear the whole world paused. I was shocked. Mesmerized. This college girl wore a sundress that danced around her knees. The fabric was soft, floral, like springtime bursting forth. She held a wildflower bouquet, a splash of color in a sea of gray faces. I could almost smell the sweetness mingling with the stale coffee in the air. When she smiled, those perfect white teeth illuminated the room, and my heart stuttered. Her name was Lana. My daughter introduced her, and I felt a tug in my soul I hadn't felt in years. I watched her effortlessly bridge gaps between uncomfortable laughter and soft whispers, easing my daughter's nerves. A magnetic force pulled me closer. I glanced at my ex-wife perched at the other end of the table. Her frown deepened into a scowl. The shadows in her eyes darkened, mirroring my own confusion. But I couldn't help it. Each time Lana spoke, time slowed. Her voice was a melody, it sent ripples through my heart. Suddenly, an unexpected twist. Lana's gaze shifted, locking onto mine with an intensity that took my breath away. I could swear she saw into my very soul, unraveling secrets I had buried deep. The air thickened, and my pulse quickened. I had never felt so alive and terrified simultaneously. Could this be wrong? I was a father. She was a girl, barely out of childhood. Yet, the way her laughter floated richly in the air, it felt inevitable, like destiny intertwining our paths. I felt a lump rise in my throat. What feelings were emerging beneath the surface? Before I could grasp it all, the scene shifted once again. My daughter's phone buzzed loudly on the table, shattering our bubble. She looked down, and her face drained of color. Then she turned to me, panic written all over her features. "Dad, it's Mom." As I reached for her phone, the room spun. I needed to know what was happening. My heart raced like the pounding of a drum. What crisis was about to unfold? Would it unravel everything? I felt the weight of the world crashing down. Just then, I realized Lana was watching me, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. In that moment, a question hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. Would this blind date turn into something beautiful, or was it the beginning of a chaos I couldn't even imagine? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash the like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Panic surged through the air as I grabbed my daughter's phone, feeling the heat rising in my face. My mind raced what had happened. I glanced at Lana, her wide blue eyes searching mine for answers I didn't have. What chaos was looming, threatening to shatter the fragile moment we had just begun to build? "Mom." My daughter whispered into the phone, her voice trembling. The unease was palpable, wrapping around us like thick fog. As she listened intently, the color drained further from her face. I wanted to reach out, to reassure her everything would be okay, but the suffocating weight of uncertainty ensured that my words would stick in my throat. Lana gently placed her hand on my forearm, the warmth of her touch igniting a spark of comfort amidst my rising dread. "What's wrong?" she asked softly, her voice a soothing balm. It was unexpected kindness in a moment riddled with fear, and it made me ache for the possibility of hope despite the chaos swirling around us. My daughter hung up, her expression a mixture of anxiety and disbelief. "It's about Grandma," she managed, voice shaking. "She's in the hospital." The words shattered the moment we were trying to create, pouring darkness all around. My heart plummeted into a pit of dread, thinking about my own mother and the struggle she had faced, a recent diagnosis that now felt like an impending storm barreling toward us. The room felt charged, each breath a struggle against an unseen force. "I'm so sorry," Lana said quietly, her eyes brimming with empathy. It was a small gesture, yet it pierced through the heavy atmosphere, igniting a flicker of hope within me. I appreciated it more than I could voice. In that moment, she was more than just my daughter's blind date, she was a lifeline. As we all gathered our things to leave, I felt the immediate distance create a chasm between us and the hopeful future I had dared to dream of only moments before. With my daughter's hand held firmly in mine, I stole another glance at Lana. She stood there, her vibrant spirit dimmed but not extinguished entirely, as she offered us a weak smile. "Can I come with you?" she asked abruptly, surprising herself as much as us. My daughter looked at me, seeking guidance, and I realized that in the depths of this chaos, perhaps we all needed each other more than I had anticipated. "Sure," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I wanted her by my side, to experience what I feared was an oceans-wide rift growing between what I wished for and the painful reality pulling us back. As we navigated through the hospital's sterile hallways, I felt a torrent of emotions battering my heart: fear for my mother, anxiety about where my daughter fit into all of this, and that flickering ember of attraction that I dared not explore just yet. When we reached my mother's room, the atmosphere felt charged with an unexpected melancholy. She lay there, frail and small, surrounded by antiseptic scents that stung my nose. Her eyes flickered open at the sound of our footsteps. "Oh, honey," she murmured as I leaned down to embrace her, feeling the years pressing between us like dense fog. "Mom, I'm here." I blinked back tears that threatened to spill at the sight of her vulnerable state. "Who's this?" she asked, her voice weak yet curious as she turned to Lana with a hint of warmth. "This is Lana, a friend of mine," my daughter interjected, her voice steadying as she stepped forward. "We met tonight at dinner," I added weakly, feeling the connection to Lana deepen as my mother smiled, her expression softening the gloom that had blanketed us all. She had always been the cornerstone of our family. To see her like this twisted a knife in my heart. "Hello, Lana." "It's lovely to meet you," my mother said, her voice cracked but genuine. "Thank you for being here." In that moment, a new bond flickered to life. I saw in Lana's eyes a spark of understanding that would be hard to communicate. Somehow, she represented the lightness I had yearned for, even as shadows stretched around us. As minutes passed, we shared small stories, flights of laughter interrupted by my mother's coughing. Spells. But when we collectively leaned into our hope, it felt tangible, something we could wrap around us like a warm blanket against the chill of reality. Eventually, we all fell silent, the unspoken fear gnawing at the edges. I reached out, gently squeezing my daughter's hand, reminding her she was not alone in this. Lana sat quietly nearby, her presence a comforting constant amidst the uncertainty, but as I glanced over to Lana, I saw something in her gaze, a knowing glance that made the air shift around us once more. The weight of our respective realities hung like a delicate thread, ready to snap. As the doctor entered the room, my heart raced again, dread pooling as he made eye contact with us. "I need to speak to you all," he said, the gravity of his words wrapping around us, leaving no room for doubt. With the doctor's ominous tone, I felt hope slipping through my fingers like sand. The fragile moment we had just begun to create, alongside the nagging weight of attraction to Lana, hung precariously in the air like a ticking time bomb. Would we be left standing or crumble under the pressure of what was yet to be revealed? The air in the room thickened as the doctor's presence shifted our fragile haven into a battleground of uncertainty. My heart raced, and I could feel my daughter's grip on my hand tighten, her knuckles turning white as fear coursed through her. Leah's breathing quickened, and I dared not look at Lana, afraid that acknowledgement of the connection we had only just started to explore would implode under this weighty moment. "Your mother's condition has taken a turn," the doctor began, his voice steady yet laced with an undertone that sent a chill spiraling down my spine. He glanced over his notes, and my eyes lost focus, trailing back to my mother, who seemed smaller than just moments ago. "We need to discuss her treatment options moving forward." In that split second, time slowed. I could hear the faint sounds of machines beeping, the whispers of distant conversations in the corridor, yet all of it faded beneath the siren call of dread pooling inside me. Questions erupted, the kind that left dark echoes in my mind. Would we be able to keep her stable? How much time do we have? "Mom," I murmured, only half aware of the words spilling from my lips. "Well, get through this together." A promise I wasn't sure I could keep. Alana, perceptive as she was, shifted closer, her presence a quiet strength. I caught her eye, and for a moment, everything outside the room faded. In her gaze, I found a flicker of compassion mingling with an understanding of grief, echoing the very fears curling around my heart. Maybe it was in the way she moved closer to my side, like a beacon guiding us through the impending storm. "What are the options?" I finally choked out, forcing myself to focus on the doctor's words. He cleared his throat, launching into a detailed explanation of treatments, some hopeful, others tempered by risks. The medical jargon washed over me like a distant tide, my mind struggling to grasp the enormity of it all. "We can administer a stronger course of chemotherapy, but it could be hard on her. There's also the potential for hospice care, depending on how she responds to the treatment." Each option he presented felt like a nail driven into my heart, the sharpness of reality piercing through the hopeful facade we had created just moments before. The world felt heavier. I could see the way my daughter leaned towards my mother, clinging to the very essence of family, and it broke me. Tears welled in my eyes as I searched for the right words. "Mom," I said, voice trembling. "What do you want?" The frail woman looked at me, the wisdom that had always illuminated her gaze now clouded by uncertainty. "I want to see you both happy," she whispered, her words barely escaping past a breath. "Happy?" My daughter echoed, confusion painting her features. "Mom, you don't have to worry about us." "What about you?" We all held our breath, the reality settling heavily in the air. I could see the resolve softening in my mother's eyes, the realization that there was very little control left for any of us. "You need to take care of yourselves first," she replied. "Promise me that." As the words sank in, the bond between us felt both fragile and unbreakable. It was then, unexpectedly, that Lana reached for my hand. The warmth radiating from her touch sent an electric jolt through me, momentarily distracting me from the crushing weight of uncertainty. Without a word, she squeezed my fingers tighter, offering a silent testament to our solidarity, a reminder that amidst the chaos surrounding us, we could still hold each other up. It was a lifeline I desperately needed. Just as I began to gather strength from this connection, the door swung open again, revealing my sister, Sarah, with worry etched deep into her features. "I rushed over as soon as I heard," she said, her voice a mix of urgency and concern. She stepped into the room, her gaze darting between my mother, my daughter, and then landing on me, a storm brewing in her eyes. "Is it true? About Grandma?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Not now, Sarah," I said, my temper flaring. I didn't have the energy to manage her incredulity on top of everything else. But she pressed on, her determination flaring. "You need to understand that I'm in this too. Maybe you should try being here when it counts, instead of running back and forth between your responsibilities." Each word cut deeper than I intended, but bitterness flooded in, driven by fear, and I could see the hurt in her eyes. Immediately, guilt washed over me once more. This was not how it was supposed to be. The last moments we had together shouldn't be marred by old grievances. Lana gently tugged at my hand, her presence grounding me. "Let's just focus on Mom for now," she soothed. Just then, the doctor, sensing the emotions in the air, cleared his throat again. "Maybe it would be best if we all took a moment to breathe," he suggested, glancing between us. "I can give you some time to process. But I must advise you, time is of the essence." Every eye in the room turned toward my mother, an unspoken acknowledgement of our fragile reality. As we gathered ourselves amidst the storm of emotions, a new level of complicity formed. Despite the fear, I sensed that with Lana's quiet strength and my sister's struggle for connection, the fabric of our family might not be as frayed as I once believed. But just as I was about to reflect on that glimmer of connection, my mother's voice broke through the tension once more. "I have something to tell you all." At that moment, the world froze and the air turned electrified. Whatever she was about to reveal felt weightier than any decision we had been scraping together. My chest constricted as I held Lana's hand tighter, feeling the echo of my sister's dread as we awaited her words. Some truths could alter everything. The air grew thick once more, pregnant with meaning and the heavy weight of unspoken truths. My mother's frail figure seemed to radiate a quiet strength as she braced herself to share whatever revelation had remained buried until this moment. I feared the possibilities, anticipating secrets that could further fracture the precarious bonds we had mustered amidst the chaos. "Sometimes," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "there are things we don't get to say until it's too late. The way she looked at each of us made the emotion in the room feel unbearably rich, almost palpable. Lana's grip on my hand tightened even further, as if sensing the onslaught of emotions that were about to pour forth. I glanced at Sarah, whose eyes shimmered with unshed tears, waiting for our mother's words to break the dam. "I want you to know that I always loved your father deeply," she continued, a faint tremor in her voice. "Even when we were struggling, and even when things fell apart, my love never faltered. I know I'm not here just as a mother, I'm a woman with her own story." Surprise washed over us, mingling with the sorrow that had taken root in our hearts. There was so much I wanted to ask, questions that lingered in the back of my mind: the nature of her love, the challenges she faced, and the parts of her life I had never truly understood. "Mom," I managed, but she raised a hand, almost in warning. "Let me finish," she implored, her gaze steady. "There were sacrifices I made that perhaps I shouldn't have, but I thought it was for the best for you both. I see now that in trying to protect you, I hid parts of myself away, and I regret that deeply. My heart ached for her, for the loneliness she must have felt while she wore her mother's mantle. I had thought I knew my mother completely, but here she was, revealing a depth that I had never fully grasped. The emotions were a whirlwind, spinning around me as I processed the fragility of our circumstances. "Mom, it's okay," Sarah finally interjected, her voice trembling. "We understand. We love you," but there was something more, something longing to break loose within this revelation. I found myself wishing for clarity, for the ability to grasp the threads of our family history that my mother was hinting at. "What do you mean by sacrifices?" I asked, my curiosity stronger than the fear wrapping around my heart. She took a deep breath, her frame trembling slightly. "I sacrificed parts of myself to maintain a family that I thought was whole. But sometimes, the truth is that people can love each other and still fall apart. I want you to learn this before it's too late." Her eyes shifted from mine to Sarah's and then back to me, an almost pleading look dawning upon her face. Before I could respond, the beeping of the machines grew more insistent, punctuating the tension, thickening the air. The door swung open yet again, revealing a nurse with urgency in her demeanor. "I'm sorry, but we need to check your mother's vitals," she said softly, though her eyes reflected a familiarity with the weight of mortality. As they began to draw closer, I felt Lana's hand slip away from mine, replaced by an instinctive need to be closer to my mother. The room felt more suffocating, as if nothing could drown out the whispers of impending loss. The scene shifted, overwhelming men not only with fear but with the revelation that perhaps we had spent too much time navigating old grievances instead of truly understanding each other. "Please," my mother whispered as the nurse began her work. "Remember, no matter what, it's always been about love." Tears brimmed in my eyes as I grappled with the complex tapestry of our relationships. I wanted to assure her that we would be okay, that I could be the daughter she needed, fiercely loving, even in the face of uncertainty. But just as the nurse finished, a sudden commotion erupted in the hallway, a sudden burst of voices and running footsteps. My heart faltered, a premonition echoing in my mind as adrenaline surged through me. The atmosphere shifted, an unseen force pulled my attention to the doorway. "Wait!" a frantic voice shouted, slicing through the tense air. My heart raced as I turned, the world outside seeming to pulse with possibilities, a jarring reminder that life was still happening beyond these doors, a reality we could not control. What I started, but then the figure came into view. A man, disheveled and breathless, stepped into the room, eyes wide with urgency. "I am sorry," he gasped, and the world slid beneath my feet. Through the haze of confusion, I realized with shock was my father. The man I thought we'd lost long ago, buried beneath years of blame and unspoken resentment. "Mom," I whispered, struggling to grasp the sudden, swirling emotions that spiraled within me as I caught sight of the astonishment etching itself across my mother's face. It was a moment that felt impossibly suspended in time, as though the past and present had collided, and in the quiet storm of reunion before us, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The air crackled with unspoken questions and old hurts as my father stood there, a moment frozen in time that promised to unravel everything we thought we understood about ourselves. My heart thrummed wildly, caught between disbelief and a surge of unexpected hope. Here was a man who had once been a stranger but was now the catalyst for something long dormant, a chance for truth and understanding to bloom. "Dad?" My voice trembled, raw with emotion. Years laced with absence hung heavy in the air around us. The weight of my mother's revelations moments earlier felt both illuminated and overshadowed by his presence. He stepped forward, the sunlight from the window catching remnants of past struggles etched in the lines of his face. There was hesitation in his eyes, fear mingling with an almost palpable awe, as if he could hardly believe he was seeing us again after all this time. "Please," he breathed, his urgency spilling over into desperation. "I need to talk. I know I've failed you all, and am not here to make excuses, but I couldn't let her go without saying goodbye." I had no idea the nurse had retreated. The chaos outside had quieted, leaving us in a stillness that belied the torrential emotions brewing within each of us. My mother hadn't moved. She seemed to be suspended, caught between past loves and present doubts. The flicker of hope blossomed in my chest, but it was quickly tempered by memories, the scars of betrayal mixed with a longing for healing. "Why now?" Sarah's voice was softer than a whisper, but there was fierce determination behind her words. "Why couldn't you have done this before?" "I was lost," he admitted, his gaze drifting to the floor, as though the weight of his admissions was too much to carry. "I thought leaving was best, that maybe you would be better off without me. But I see now that it was the worst mistake of my life." Tears brimmed in my mother's eyes, washing over the years of pain like rain on cracked earth. I could see the conflict swirling within Hera, longing for closure, battling the years of hurt inflicted. Despite the tension in the room, a flicker of hope ignited, urging us to witness the vulnerability devoid of armor. "Mom," I dared to step closer to her, wanting to pull her from the shadows of the past. "What do you feel right now?" She looked at me, the gravity of my question hovering like a fragile thread between us. "I feel confused, frightened, yet a deep part of me wishes we could start over." Her voice cracked as she spoke, revealing her vulnerability. "But am terrified of the same mistakes repeating." Just then, I noticed a flicker of movement at the periphery of my vision. A nurse entered quietly behind my father, carrying a tray of medications. She paused, witnessing the unfolding drama with a compassion that seemed to ease the weight of the moment. It was a small gesture, but it loomed large amidst the swirling emotions, someone recognizing not just our pain, but our desire for healing. At that moment, my father turned his gaze back to my mother, eyes glistening with unspoken regret. "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was protecting you both by disappearing. If I could change it all." His voice trailed off, heavy with remorse. The air shifted once more, wrapping around us in a tender embrace. I felt the flicker of something brand new, something that shaped itself into a fragile but bright thread in our family's tapestry. Just then, I caught Lana's eye, her expression a mirror of hope mixed with caution. "Can we start by just talking? No judgments?" I urged, desperately hoping for a bridge to form between them, a path to navigate the uncharted waters ahead. My mother nodded slowly, her breath uneven, and my father stepped closer to her, as if instinctively believing that proximity could undo the past. "I want to know everything. I want to be here for you both," he murmured. Yet before the moment could unfurl its intrinsic beauty into resolution, a sudden alarm rang out in the room, one that sliced through the fragile atmosphere we were attempting to create. The machines surrounding my mother bleeped frantically, red lights flashing like urgent warnings in a world that had momentarily forgotten chaos. "Doctor!" the nurse shouted, and instantly, the atmosphere shifted from cautiously hopeful to dread-filled panic as new staff rushed in. My heart dropped as I clung to the uncertainty of our paths. We were on the brink of redemption, yet teetering dangerously close to the edge of loss once more. Just as my body tensed, ready to react, I caught my mother's eyes, firm, resolute even amidst the turmoil. She seemed to draw strength from whatever decision lay at the crux of this moment, the choice to open a door we'd long kept locked. "Don't give up on me," she whispered to my father, and in that plea, I saw all the unspoken things swirling between them and within our own hearts. As chaos enveloped the room in a flurry of white coats and medical lingo, epiphanies danced in the flickering warmth between us, but time was cruel, and the reality of the moment was caught on the precipice of taking flight or crashing down. And as panic seized us, I wondered, would this be the moment we all remembered, forever entangled in the threads of what-ifs, or would we greet the dawn of understanding before it was too late? As the chaos of the hospital room deepened, I felt the ground shift beneath me. The sound of machines blaring and doctors calling out was a cacophony that drowned out the fragile heartbeat of hope that had barely sparked among us. I looked at my mother, whose face was a canvas of fear and unyielding strength, and then back at my father, who was visibly unraveling under the pressure. "Stay with me," I whispered, my voice filled with an urgency I didn't entirely understand. I wanted to cling to the magic of our recent moment, a fragile connection, a lifetime in the making, but the weight of my mother's distress threatened to collapse the new beginnings we had barely begun to explore. The medical staff streamed in like an unstoppable tide, their movements swift and precise, their faces concentrated and stoic, but it felt like they were intruding on something sacred. I was torn between the primal instinct to protect my mother and the desperate need to witness this unfolding between my parents. As they wheeled my mother away, I could barely breathe, the room increasing in volume while my thoughts raced ahead, spiraling through images of what the past had kept hidden and what the future might hold. This isn't happening, I thought, tightening my grip on my father's arm. We were just trying to connect, we can't lose her now. Where are they taking her? My father sputtered, his face pale, the usual stoic demeanor of a man long absent crumbling into despair before my eyes. Just down the hall for a procedure, a nurse reassured us, her eyes meeting my father's, soft but resolute. It's standard. Stay here, and we'll update you. Please, try to stay calm. As they whisked my mother away, I suddenly felt like a child again, vulnerable and lost in an adult world that seemed to devour kindness like oxygen. My heart ached as uncertainty settled over me, a ghost of old anxieties resurfacing, the fear of loss, the pain of not knowing if anything we'd uncovered could survive the storm of reality. But just as the darkness threatened to swallow me whole, I caught a movement from the corner of my eye. It was the nurse again, her presence quietly grounding amidst the chaos. She placed a gentle hand on my shoulder and leaned in slightly, a small smile breaking through the tension. Listen, we're going to do everything we can for her. We have excellent doctors here, she said softly, squeezing my shoulder before stepping back, each word imbued with a reassuring warmth that lingered like sunlight breaking through clouds. Gratitude swelled within me, pushing against the wedge that fear had driven between my emotions. The simple kindness of a stranger provided a spark, igniting the hope yet again. Perhaps even within the depths of despair, we would find allies, reminders of the goodness that still flickered in the world. For a fleeting moment, I felt the urge to reach out to my father, to bridge the distance formed by years of silence. Dad, I began, feeling the urgency swirl in my chest. But he seemed trapped in his own turmoil, eyes distant and unfocused. Forgive me, he murmured, lips trembling as he sank into a nearby chair, the weight of his confession heavy on his shoulders. I should have fought harder for you both. I wish I could take it all back. A part of me longed to comfort him, yet another part felt resentful, a child always left in the shadows, yearning for his presence. You can't change the past, but we can choose how we move forward, I said, my voice steadying as I leaned my weight against the wall. But you have to want to be here, truly. You can't just disappear again. Just as my words settled in the air, the chaotic beeping of the machines suddenly shifted. The alarm stilled, leaving just echoing quiet, a moment's pause suspended like breath held tightly. My heart raced at the implications. It could mean something was wrong, or that perhaps good news lingered on the horizon. Out of nowhere, Sarah rushed into the room, her brows knit together with concern. What happened? She demanded, her eyes darting between us, searching for answers. I heard the alarms. Is she okay? She's stable for now, I managed, but my insides were a tempest, torn between wanting to shield her from our grief and the necessity of including her in this family saga already so convoluted. I want to be here for you all, for Mom, she said, her voice thicker than I'd ever heard it. Whatever you need, we will face it together. In that moment, the courage of her words lent me strength, filling the gaps of despair. Thank you, I told her, and for the first time since the whole ordeal began, I felt a flicker of kinship around us, a reminder that we weren't alone in the trenches of this emotional battle. But just as the fragile hope seemed to weave itself into our shaky foundation, the door burst open again. A doctor, face serious and taut, strode in, his voice carrying the weight of finality. I need to speak to you about your mother's condition. His tone shifted the air again. This wasn't a moment for optimism. The unsaid words hung around us like a storm cloud, threatening to wash away any budding connections we had forged just moments before. What's wrong? I demanded, heart racing, every instinct screaming to brace for impact. The doctor paused, the gravity sitting heavily on his shoulders. There have been complications, he began, but before he could finish, the world slipped out from under me as the dark abyss of uncertainty yawned wider, threatening to consume us all. The air in the hospital room thickened with an unbearable tension, each heartbeat reverberating like thunder against the walls. My father's face drained of color, mirroring the wave of dread that crashed down upon me. I wanted to succumb to the panic rising in my chest, but the resilience that had been my lifeline pulled me back from the brink. Complications? My father's voice cracked, barely more than a whisper. The word struck me like a physical blow, reverberating with the weight of all the unspoken fears that had clung to us since my mother's initial diagnosis. What kind of complications? The doctor steadied himself, his gaze flickering between us like a moth drawn to the light. Her heart isn't responding as we hoped. We need to conduct further tests, and we may need to consider additional interventions. Every word dripped with the heaviness of an impending storm, the doctor a harbinger of fate I wished I could send away. My mother's laughter had been a song playing in my ears only days before, and now it felt as if that music were retreating into the shadows. The warmth of connection I had begun to feel with my family burned away under the harsh fluorescent lights, replaced by an icy chill of despair. What does that even mean? I spat, anger rising to the surface as if it could shield me from the inevitable. What does it mean if she needs more? I struggled to breathe, yearning to clutch onto something, anything, that could make sense of the chaos. It means she has more challenges ahead, but we have a plan, the doctor reassured, though his words were pillows upon a bed of nails. I could see the concern etched into his features, the lingering hope he cast in front of us like a life buoy in a stormy sea. My father's hand trembled as he reached for mine, and even in that moment of dread, a flicker of something I could only identify as longing for connection threaded between us. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, he choked out. I don't know how this happened. I thought she's supposed to get better. I did too, I murmured, feeling tears prick at the corners of my eyes, those familiar fears bubbling up again. But we can't give up. We have to believe she'll pull through. In the shadows of uncertainty, a realization dawned upon me. His was a moment that defined us. If we were to survive the onslaught of grief and loss, we had to forge new paths together, rebuilding our shredded connections thread by thread, moment by moment. Just then, Sarah stepped forward, positioning herself between us and the doctor, her voice firm yet protective. What do you need us to do? She asked, her eyes narrowed with determination. A spark of admiration flickered in me. She may have felt overwhelmed, but her spirit emanated warmth, grounding us, reminding us we were not alone. We need you to hold on to hope. Your mother is a fighter, the doctor said, his voice softer, almost fatherly. And that strength often comes from family and support. Then that's what we'll do, I said, glancing at my father's face hesitant yet yearning. We'll fight for her. We'll be here every step of the way. The words felt heavier than stones but steadied me, anchoring me in this volatile storm. As the doctor explained the best course of action moving forward, I found my hand brushing against my father's as if out of some need for unity. But even as we absorbed the information, the underlying fractures were too real to ignore. The air was dense with the unsaid, the accumulated weight of years of avoidance. Outside the room, the hustle of the hospital continued, but in my mind, the noise faded, replaced by fragments and fleeting moments of our past. My father's laughter, the tenderness with which he once held my mother's hand, the way they had bonded over shared glances that painted a million stories between them. The conversation began to circle around treatment plans, possible outcomes, and what was required from each of us. I felt like a ghost in the room, lost in a torrent of images, memories blending with anxiety. Then, as if summoned from the shadows of my thoughts, another nurse returned, this time with a small tray, 2 cups of steaming tea. I figured you might need a moment of calm, she said, her eyes sweeping over our haggard faces, offering a semblance of comfort amidst the turmoil. She extended the tray towards us, and I took a cup, the warmth radiating against my palms, a reminder that even in the darkest storms, kindness could sprinkle down like much-needed rain. As we sipped, I felt a painfully sweet memory slip through, the way my mother would brew tea on cold nights, sitting close to the fireplace, her laugh filling the room. In that moment, the love from those days wrapped itself around me like an old quilt, though it felt tattered and frayed at the edges. But just as I began to believe we could build back the pieces, the doctor returned with the heavy weight of his earlier tone. There's something else, he said, as if bracing us for impact. We found an anomaly and it could have significant implications for her treatment. At that moment, time suspended itself, and I could hardly breathe. The unsettling weight of his words hung in the air like fog, thickening my heart with dread. What do you mean? I rasped, fear knotting tighter in my chest, but before he could respond, I felt a familiar yet unexpected warmth brushing against my fingers. Sarah's hand, sliding silently into mine. And just like that, in the face of uncertainty, I realized we would need each other more than ever. The doctor parted his lips, but his words were lost under the sheer weight of silence that laced the room, a full breath of shadows enveloping us as we braced for whatever came next. With a single moment, the fragile hope we had begun to weave faced a threat that could either bring us together or tear everything down once more. The atmosphere in the hospital room shifted, taut with currents of anxiety and anticipation. I felt it coil around my heart, constricting the rhythm of each breath, as the doctor stood before us, his weary expression betraying the gravity of his next words. It might be a genetic condition, he stated softly, one that could complicate her treatment. The cadence of his speech felt urgent, almost desperate, as if he knew we were balancing on the precipice of despair. My father flinched, taking a step back, his fingers brushing against the edge of the medical chart left carelessly on the counter. I could feel the tremor in his hand as it crumpled the paper, and a fierce pulse of protectiveness surged through me. Genetic? I whispered, the word lodged in my throat like a stone. What does that mean for her? For us? There was a suffocating weight in those 3 syllables, an unspoken fear of what familial ties could unravel in the wake of illness. The doctor pinched the bridge of his nose, taking a moment to find the right words. It means there could be hereditary factors involved that may require additional screening, not just for her, but for you both. Another wave of silence rippled through the room, punctuated only by the beeping machines, counting down each anxious second that felt maddeningly endless. My racing thoughts collided in a cacophony of fears and worries. Were my mother's struggles something I'd inherit? Would my daughter face the same demons? As if sensing the panic rising within me, Sarah squeezed my hand tighter. Her warmth cut through the tension, anchoring me back into the present, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this. I turned to her, seeking clarity in her eyes, which glistened like polished stone, solid, unwavering, but carrying the sorrow of the moment. "Well, manage this together," she said softly, her voice a gentle balm. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out as a family." I marveled at her strength, the way she seemed to shine even in the midst of chaos. Other family members often diminished under pressure, consumed by their own fears. But Sarah brought a lightness that felt revolutionary. Even in the darkest of times, the doctor's voice broke me from my thoughts. "I understand this is a lot to process. Would recommend a genetic consultation as soon as possible. It could provide answers and help guide future treatment options. But I want to emphasize that, despite the challenges she faces, hope remains. Many patients with similar conditions have gone on to lead fulfilling lives. Hope, like a fragile flower breaking through concrete, elicited a moment of brightness amidst the clouds gathering in my heart. Yet I found it hard to grasp, to believe in a future when the present felt so inexorably dark. "I will find a way to make this work," I said vehemently, perhaps more for my own sake than anyone else's. I needed to believe it. This resolve took root inside me, pushing back against the currents threatening to sweep me under. After the doctor left, I could hardly talk, lost in the myriad of implications set loose in my mind. I wanted to reach for a sliver of light, but shadows danced along the walls, reminding me of all my mother's struggles echoed in my own unformed fears. In that silence, when the world around us was muted, I felt my father reach for my shoulder. His hand was tentative, as if he feared the weight of his own touch. I turned to face him, and I could see the lines of worry etched deeper into his skin. "Did I do this?" He barely voiced the question, and the agony in his eyes ripped through me. "What if all those years of stress? What if it's my fault she's suffering like this?" "No," I replied firmly, holding his gaze with an intensity that startled me. "You did everything you could, Dad. She had so much love in her life, and behind all this, we have to remember that." The moment hung heavy, suspended in the shared understanding of past regrets and fears for the future. Somewhere beneath the surface, I felt the rough texture of hope stirring, corroded, perhaps, but still willing to shine through. A nurse poked her head in. "Breaking our moment. Sorry to interrupt, but I need to take you both for some routine tests, medical history and family history data, given the situation." Her bright, cheery demeanor was like a call to arms, lifting some of the weight that had settled on our shoulders. As I walked beside my father, still grappling with turmoil, I felt a slight graze against my arm. Sarah's hand. It was a tether anchoring me to the now, reminding me I had chosen to dance with hope, whether it was painful or joyful. Through the clinical halls, I couldn't shake the nagging fears that clouded my intuition, shadows whispering warnings of what lay ahead. What if I lost the 2 people I loved the most? But as the testing room approached, one thought eclipsed all others: I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful. When we finally left the room, I felt reinvigorated, albeit cautiously. We were a family facing an immutable storm, but the support we offered each other began to stitch together the fragments of our hearts. As if the universe conspired, I caught a glance of Sarah walking a few steps ahead, her light hair illuminated by the stark lights above. But just as I thought there was clarity ahead, my phone buzzed in my pocket, vibrating like an ominous note. The message flashed in bold, "I need to talk to you. It's urgent." My heart plunged, a sense of impending doom coursed through me. Who could it be? More than ever, I understood that in the chaos of our lives, more revelations lurked, revealing not just the fragility of life, but perhaps the ultimate truth we had all been skirting around. "Everything all right?" Sarah's voice cut through my rising anxiety, and I attempted a smile, though uncertainty gnawed at me. "I don't know, but it doesn't feel right." In that moment, I could feel the remnants of hope slipping through my fingers. If the urgency behind that message was as grave as my instincts warned, I knew the next step would define everything, tipping the balance in ways that could unravel us once more. The journey ahead was filled with uncertainty, riddled with shadows, and yet we would have to face it together. The hospital's stark interior faded into the background as I stepped outside, taking a deep breath of the crisp air, as if the outside world could somehow sweep away the suffocating weight of our circumstances. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that intertwined like the fear and hope battling within me. There was a moment of fleeting peace, but it quickly faded as my phone buzzed again, more insistent this time. I glanced at the screen, heart-pounding urgent. The person behind the message wasn't just anyone, it was my estranged sister, Emily. Over the years, our relationship had unraveled, divided by unspoken grievances and painful silence following the death of our mother. What could she possibly want now, and why did it feel like something was about to shift irrevocably, Mom? I muttered under my breath, as if her absence could somehow manifest in this turbulent moment. I felt a wave of nausea swell as I recalled the last few conversations I avoided with Emily, always fearing that any dialogue would reignite old wounds. "Is everything all right?" Sarah's soothing tone broke through my spiral. I caught myself hesitating, debating whether to share this unexpected development with her. The warmth of her hand on mine felt grounding, yet produced a fierce guilt at the thought of dragging her into my complicated family history. "Just a message from Emily," I managed to say, carefully tucking the phone back into my pocket, hoping the revelation would dissipate like smoke. "Do you want to read it?" she asked, concern creasing her lovely brow. I paused, caught between honesty and the instinct to shield her from potential turmoil. Instead, I opted to address the current storm we faced, the realities of my daughter's health. "It's probably nothing, just some family drama," I finally said, hoping to dismiss it. "We should focus on Sophia." As we approached the main entrance of the building, my father lingered on the step behind me, still caught in the gravity of the storm. It was hard not to feel resentful for the emotional history we shared, the unresolved tension swirling about him. He had done his best by showing up, even when it felt like he was losing grip on himself. "We'll get through this," I whispered, more to myself than to him, as my gaze lingered on the fluid movements of the nurses and doctors inside, their lives orbiting ours, blissfully unaware of our struggles. The ride home was a thoughtful quiet. I felt the weight of distraction. I couldn't help but glance at my phone, hoping Emily might text again with more clarity, but it remained stubbornly still. What if she needs me? I thought, a small knot tightening in my stomach. I pulled back from the spiraling thoughts, choosing to focus on the mundane. I switched on the radio, letting music fill the void, but even the notes felt strained against the hum of anxiety. "Are you okay?" Sarah asked gently, glancing at me through the corner of her eye. "Really?" "I should be asking you that," I replied, feigning a smile. She had been steadfast through this dark time, holding the pieces of my family together as I battled against my own fears. "What about you? Are you ready for tomorrow's blind date?" Her eyes brightened, and she shifted slightly in her seat, a flicker of excitement dancing within them. "Oh, I'm just hoping he's not too cringeworthy. I mean, blind dates can be so hit or miss." Her lightheartedness washed over me like a balm, even if it was only temporary. I wished to take hold of that joy she exuded, wrapping it around both of us like a shield against the uncertainty looming in our lives. Yet, the day remained fragile, as if it could shatter with one wrong word or action. "What if it's more than just a date to Sophia?" I suggested, unsure why the thought had crossed my mind. "What if he's that guy? You know, the one she could potentially fall for. If that happens, then I'll have to bring my A game," she replied, laughter bubbling beneath the surface. "But you know, I doubt it will be anything serious. I mean, we're both in such different places." There was an uncharacteristic seriousness in her tone, almost as if she were foreshadowing something that hadn't yet happened. Life has a way of surprising us, doesn't it? I mused quietly, feeling the resonance of our pasts wrapping around our present like a cautious embrace. The moment dissipated as we arrived home, the porch light flickered on, illuminating the path. Sophia, still innocent of the turmoil swirling around us, was outside, waiting with eager eyes for our return. The sight of her shining face melted the weight of my worries, if only for a skimming moment. "Mom! You're back!" she exclaimed, bounding forward, her youthful exuberance reminding me of the joy we could still find within chaos. But as I turned to greet her, a sudden thought gripped me. What of my sister? What convoluted truths seeped through the cracks? Would the revealing of another family secret bring solace or strain against the already tenuous bonds we were trying to forge? Just as I reached to embrace Sophia, my phone buzzed once more. The screen lit up with a single message from Emily that made my heart race. "We need to talk about Mom and the tests." A chill coursed through me as everything inside began to tighten once more, entangled in the web of past scars and present darkness. The revelation that awaited me could darken our future, sweeping away the fragile harmony we had built. Would I summon the courage to confront the truth, or would fear bind me in silence? The fight felt far from over, and I knew that the next steps would unearth buried complexities, demanding an honesty I wasn't sure I was ready to face. The sun dipped below the horizon as I stepped back into the familiar chaos of home, my heart still heavy from the hospital, the blood of uncertainty racing just beneath my skin. Sophia ran to me, her laughter a balm for the turmoil that brewed within. Yet, a specter of apprehension lingered. How could I shield her from the truth, the impending reality we all feared? I knelt down to envelop her in an embrace, inhaling the sweet scent of her hair, the innocence of childhood clinging to her like a lifeline. "Hey, Mom. How was Grandma? Is she feeling better?" Her wide eyes sparkled with hope, and in that moment, I realized how tenuous that hope felt. How could I answer her without burdening her heart? "She's fighting really hard, sweetheart. Just like you taught me." The lie hung heavy on my lips, yet I knew I had to maintain the flame of hope for her sake. As I brushed her cheek and felt the warmth radiating from her being, I knew hope was something I had to ignite and have a flicker against the growing shadows. She grinned and grabbed my hand, pulling me towards the living room where the air still held echoes of laughter and shared moments. Sarah followed closely, her aura steadying me with outspoken words. I could sense her questions, the worries brewing just beneath the surface, but I couldn't afford to delve into that. Not now. As we settled in, I distracted myself with the mundane, filling glasses with water and mulling over the leftover dinner, attempting to ignore the impending message from Emily still lurking in my mind, waiting like a dark cloud ready to unleash its storm. "Can I help?" Sophia chirped, an eager bounce in her step as she reached for the plates. It was pure childlike innocence wrapped in the moment of bonding, chasing away the heaviness for a heartbeat longer. I ruffled her hair, appreciating how she sought connection amidst uncertainty. If only I could map out her future, shield her from pain, for the years would weigh heavy upon us, and I didn't want her launching into adulthood fraught with shadows. "Just sit tight, kiddo. I'll handle dinner," I reassured her, but as I glanced over to Sarah, her gaze conveyed the familiarity of burden that mirrored my own. Moments passed, tans and golds of the evening fading into the coolness of night. Just as laughter bubbled on the edge of my lips, I felt my phone vibrate, the sharp jolt pulling me back into reality where conflict loomed like a storm on the horizon. I lifted it slowly, the name on the screen slicing through me like a blade. Emily. Despite the trepidation that threatened to engulf me, I drew in a swift, steadying breath and pressed open the message, "Meet me tomorrow. We need to discuss Mom's test results, and you need to know everything. Now." A wave of confusion crashed over me, blurring seconds into minutes. I felt my heart pummel harder against my ribcage, thoughts spiraling out of control. What results? What did she know that I didn't? The door was creaking open on painful truths, and I remained suspended, caught between disbelief and reluctant acceptance. "Everything okay?" Sarah's voice pulled me back, her brow knitted with concern, mirroring the ache I couldn't voice. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I took a moment, searching for footing. "It's about Emily," I eventually managed, the weight of those words heavy on my tongue. She wants to meet tomorrow to talk about Mom's test results. The silence thickened within us, the air charged with unspoken worries. What test results? Sarah pressed, her voice barely rising above a whisper, eyes widening to draw on this new dimension of uncertainty threading through the day. I don't know, I confessed, feeling frustration boiling beneath my skin. I need to know, but am terrified of what it could mean. The shadows around us deepened, and I could sense the rawness of emotions emerging, fears of loss and the possibility of bitter truth, all of it coalescing around the fragile heart of our family. Sophia tugged at my sleeve, those innocent eyes searching mine, and in that moment, I realized I couldn't shatter her world. Not again. Let's finish dinner, okay? We'll deal with it together when the time comes. Dinner itself felt like a roaring silence, filled with too many unsaid words and heavy glances, but Sophia carried on with stories that unfolded from her day, determined to chase away the shadows. Each laugh felt like a touchstone, grounding us back to the things that mattered, even as the uncertainty hung like an ominous cloud. Amidst that gathering darkness, I felt Sarah's hand brush against mine, her solidarity speaking volumes in a language that needed no words. I've got your back, she whispered softly, a silent vow to face whatever storms awaited us. Just before bed, I tucked Sophia into her blankets, her small form still radiating warmth and innocence. As I turned the lights down low, I leaned down to press a kiss to her forehead, whispering a promise that we would find our way through this, that we would be okay. With a heart still heavy with uncertainty, I finally turned to face Sarah. We need to talk about the message. About what we're up against. But even as I uttered those words, lurking deep within was a flicker of hope. Perhaps, finally, this would be a chance for healing, for clarity amongst chaos. The next day arrived, the sunlight wrapping around me with an insistent pressure to rise into the light. My skin prickled at the thought of meeting Emily, the sister with whom I'd shared both blood and silence. There was a quiet ferocity within me, an urgency to seize this moment. When I stepped into the coffee shop, the sense of fresh brews mixed with the buzz of early morning patrons replaying my own inner rhythms of fatigue and resolve. Emily looked like a ghost from the past, her long hair swaying softly, uncertainty etched into the fine lines of her face. A wave of nostalgia surged through me, but I held tightly to the present. Hey, I said slowly, my heartbeat pounding loudly. Hey, she replied almost hesitantly, as though testing the waters of my reaction to her presence. We exchanged an uneasy silence, both of us battling old hurts, moments of shame mingling with memories of laughter shared on long summer nights. Let's cut to the chase, I said finally, fears spilling into the calm of our meeting. What do you know about Mom? I could see the turmoil flickering across her features. I've heard some things, some results, she said cautiously, leaning closer, her voice barely louder than a whisper. They're concerned about, and in that moment, the memories poured through the cracks of my guarded heart. My mother's stories woven through the fabric of our lives, the laughter countering the fears concealed behind her smile. I held the picture tightly, willing my emotions to remain in check. There's a chance, Emily continued, and I saw a fear that mirrored my own lingering in her gaze. There's a chance this could be hereditary, something chronic. More testing is required. A silence fell between us as those words settled heavily, a weight pressing deeper than the air itself. I held steady, pushing against the tide of dread that's surging through me, but a fire ignited from within, one that compelled me to find clarity in the chaos intertwining our lives. Will you stand with me? I asked, my voice catching against the words. Will you be there for her? For us? Her gaze softened, and I could see the resolve forming like dawn breaking through a long and dark night. Yes, she breathed, and the weight between us began to lift. Whatever it takes. It was in that moment, wrapped in vulnerability and honesty, I felt a thread forged between us, an unbreakable bond woven of grace, hardship, and hope. Tomorrow might still be clouded with uncertainties, yet today, we found our light. As we left the coffee shop, side by side, I understood that forgiveness was possible. In acknowledging the painful past, we began to unearth the promise of something beautifully resilient. I clung tightly to that belief, whispering to myself that we could battle against the storm ahead together. And as I returned to Sophia, my heart full of both love and resolve, I recognized that healing is a journey, a series of moments stitched together with the threads of unwavering connection. Sometimes, the most incredible transformations begin not in towering victories, but in the quiet strength of moving forward, hand in hand, through the shadows. The door swung open, revealing a moment kissed by both light and presence, the world still turning around me, yet I was transformed by the journey through heartache and hope. And with my family gathered close, I found my answer, echoing in the warmth of the moments we shared, "Well, be okay."